Eärendil was a mariner that tarried in Arvernion. He built a boat of timber felled, in Nimbrethil to journey in. Her sails he wove of silver fair, of silver were her lanterns made. Her prow was fashioned like a swan, and light upon her banners laid. And over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days and years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade in orbit star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. For ever still a herald on, an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the Flammifair of Westerness. My Govanen friends, Yoistin here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we shall be talking about the history of Eärendil, the father of Elrond half-elven and the elf who became the Evening Star. I'll also link other videos that relate to this character in the description and cards above, so please feel free to check those out. Thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Born in the year 503 of the First Age in Gondolin, Eärendil the half-elf was the son of Tur, son of Hur, and Eärendil, daughter of Turgon. Eärendil, meaning sea lover in Quenya, spent the first 7 years of his life in Gondolin, until the treachery of Maeglin brought doom to the city. During the sacking of the city, Maeglin, who was his mother's cousin, laid hands upon Eärendil and was going to kill him, but Tur came and cast Maeglin from the wall of the elven city, saving his son and wife from the Dark Elf's son. After this incident, Eärendil would escape the city upon the shoulders of Eidril's housecarl Hendor. Led by Tur, the refugees would go to Nan Tathrin, or the Land of Willows. Tur made a song for Eärendil, of almost coming to the shores of Nevrast, during the earlier days of Tur's tale, and this song of the sea god awoke a longing for the sea in the hearts of both Tur and Eärendil. After this, the elves would continue their journey, going to Arvernion, where were the havens of Sirion, to dwell with the other elves who had come there. After Tur felt old age come upon him, he would take his wife Eärendil and voyage out into the sea, never to come into the tales of the free peoples again. It is sung that Tur was counted among the firstborn, and joined with the Eldar and the Noldor whom he loved dearly, and his fate is sundered from the destiny of men. In Arvernion, Eärendil would eventually become the leader of the elves who lived there, and he married Elwing, the daughter of Dagor, the son of Beleriand. In this way, the two half-elven lineages, one being from Tur and Eärendil, and the other from Beleriand, became one, the House of Eärendil. During his time in Arvernion, Eärendil would craft his ship Gil-galad, meaning foam flower in Quenya, with the help of Círdan the shipwright. Leaving his wife Elwing and sons Elrond and Elros at the havens of Sirion, Eärendil would voyage out at sea. He would not find his parents nor the shores of Aman, and in longing for his wife, he turned eastwards, and a fear had come to him out of his dreams. Whereas he had striven against the winds born out of the west before, now such winds did not hasten his journey eastwards fast enough. The fear was founded, for the remaining sons of Feanor, Maethros, Maglor, Amrod, and Amras, heard word of Elwing, who yet bore the Silmaril of Beleriand. After their requests for the Silmaril were denied, as the elves believed the Silmaril was a healing and a blessing upon their houses and ships, the sons of Feanor committed the third kinslaying at the havens of Sirion, for they were bound to their oath. Many elves were lost, and Amrod and Amras themselves were slain. Elwing took the Silmaril and cast herself into the sea, and her children Elrond and Elros were taken by Maethros and Maglor. The half-elven children would awaken love within Maglor, who would foster them. The elves who escaped the kinslaying would join with High King Ereinion Gil-galad on the island of Valar. As for Elwing, her time was not yet over, and Ulmo, the Vala of the Seas, lifted her from the ocean, and he gave her the shape of a great white bird. She would fly forth and find her love Eärendil upon Vingolot. Upon the bird's breast was the Silmaril, and Eärendil held her, as she took her own form once again. After this, and hearing the news from Middle-earth, Eärendil turned once again westwards, hoping to come to Valinor and plead for the children of Ilúvatar. The Silmaril was bound upon Eärendil's brow, and the light and power of the jewel allowed Eärendil, his wife, and their crew of 3 other elves to pass into the west. They passed Tol Eressëa and came to the Bay of Eldamar. The Teleri saw them far off and were amazed, for the light of the Silmaril was bright and holy indeed. After docking in the bay, Eärendil charged his fellow mariners to stay upon the ship, so they would not join in receiving the wrath of the Valar. But Elwing would have rather shared that doom than be sundered from her love, so she also leapt upon the shore. Eärendil had her remain upon the shore, for his fate, whatever it would be, would follow after he alone delivered his plea to the Valar. Now at this time there was another festival happening in Valimar, so Eärendil walked the paths of Tirion alone, and he was afraid that some evil had come here, to the Holy Lands. Eärendil cried out in many tongues, only for no response. When he began to head back to shore, Eonwe, the herald of Manwë, called out and welcomed Eärendil, summoning him before the Valar. And so, the half-elf went, and gave his plea to the Valar. He asked for a pardon for the Noldor, and for mercy upon the children of Ilúvatar. These prayers were answered, and Eärendil left to seek his wife, who made friends among the Teleri at Alqualande. The Valar spoke, and Mandos wondered if there should be a penalty for a mortal man stepping foot in Valinor, but Ulmo argued that this was Eärendil's fate, and he inquired whether he was of elves or men. For that was the dilemma, he was both. Mandos replied that he was also of the Noldor, who were not allowed to return to Valinor. But Manwë passed judgment, declaring that since Eärendil journeyed on behalf of elves and men, and since Elwing came on behalf of her love for him, they could not return to their kind in Middle-earth, but they would not suffer any other penalty besides that. They and their lineage were also given the choice of kindreds. They would both be summoned before the Valar and told of their fate, and Eärendil would have Elwing choose which race they would be. Because of Luthien, Elwing would choose to be one of the firstborn, and for the sake of his wife, Eärendil would also be an elf, although his heart was more with the kindred of men. After this, Eonwe would go to the shores and set Eärendil's 3 friends within a boat, and they would be sailed back to Middle-earth with a gust of wind from the Valar. The gods would hallow Gil-galad, and it would be taken to the rim of the world in the west, where it would pass through the door of night, and it would be set in the heavens. The ship was filled with a wavering flame, and Eärendil would guide the ship, glistening with the dust of elven gems upon him, and with the Silmaril bound to his brow. He would voyage far in his ship, but he was mostly seen in the morning or evening, sunrise or sunset, when he returned to Valinor from his journeys. Thus he became the evening star, while his wife Elwing would live in a white tower, and she would learn the tongues of birds and the ways of flight. She would take on wings herself, and fly to meet Eärendil in the sky when he returned home, even as the elves of the Lonely Isle saw her like a white bird. The peoples of Middle-earth looked out in wonder at the new star in the west. The elves would call his star Gil-estel, the Star of High Hope, and Maethros and Maglor would recognize it as the light of a Silmaril. But Maglor even was glad at this, for the light of his father's gem could be seen by many, and it was safe from evil. This sight filled Morgoth with doubt. He never thought that the Valar would unite with the Free Peoples to fight him, for there were many hardships between the two groups. But he was wrong. So came the War of Wrath, where the gods and their servants came to the aid of the Free Peoples. Morgoth unleashed his dragons, and the west was pushed back, until Eärendil himself came upon Gil-galad in the sky, with the birds of heaven and Thorondor, their captain. And after fighting in Celegon the Black for the length of a day, Eärendil and his allies threw down the mightiest of the dragon army, and he broke the Thangorodrim volcanoes. After this, Eärendil would remain in the sky, and his legacy would be great. Many songs would be made about the elf, and the lamp upon his ship would be called the Flammifair of Western Ness. His son Elros, the first king of Númenor, and his followers among the Edain would follow the star to Elena, which would be the island where Númenor was founded. Even after the darkening of Númenor, King Tar-Atanamir used the fate of Eärendil to argue for immortality to the messengers of the Valar, but they would say that he is numbered among the firstborn, and Elros, the forefather of the Númenorian kings, had chosen to be a man. In the Third Age, Bilbo wrote the Song of Eärendil, which he sings in the Fellowship of the Ring, and Galadriel would give to Frodo the Phial of Galadriel, which contained the light of Eärendil, which Frodo and Sam would use as a light in dark places, for the Star of Eärendil was most beloved among the Eldar. In the legendarium, Eärendil's star is what we know as Venus. And finally, if Dagorath is to happen, out of love for the sun and the moon, Eärendil will return out of the sky and come to the aid of Tulkas, Eonwe, and Turin Tarambar in the final fight against Morgoth. That brings our tale about Eärendil's history to an end. From Eärendil's life, we see that charity and compassion for all beings are virtues. Sometimes we must surrender our pride and act selflessly to preserve what is good in this world. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on Eärendil? I love this character, and I think that he is one of the most important people in all of the legendarium. Let me know any thoughts, corrections, additions, and questions you may have in the comments below, and please check out the Silmarillion for the source of today's video. Also, please take a look at our music channel, Facebook, Twitter, merch, and Patreon for a podcast and Discord server in the description, and don't forget to hit those subscribe and bell buttons to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. I'll see you all again next week with a video on the settlements of Gondor. Everyone, as always, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.